Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thursday, July 9th, 2026. Welcome to Sweeney's Take, Episode 2. And as I started my episode last time with an expression of gratitude, I want to do the same thing right now. Whether you're tuning in live or you're listening to this a day from now, a week from now, a month from now, whether it's on Spotify, Rumble, Apple Pods, YouTube, wherever my voice is coming through to you, let this be the first and last thing that I say. You could spend any 30 minutes of your precious life here on this earth. Listening to me is a gratitude that I can't even put into words. And every time you tune in to Sweeney's Take, I can't promise you're going to agree with everything I say. There's only one person on this earth, maybe besides my mom, who would agree with everything I say. She supports it. She doesn't agree with everything I say. And that's me. But what I can promise you is that every single time you dedicate 30 minutes, and this is how long the shows are going to be, to listening to me, I am going to be talking into this microphone like the rent is due. There will be a figurative blood on the floor. That's how much I'm going to give you. I can guarantee intensity. I can't guarantee you're going to see all the conclusions that I reach, but you will feel that I am being authentic, I am being genuine, and the opinions and conclusions that I'm reaching are done with diligence and good faith. And I've got a 30-minute show for you guys, and I'm going to divide it into 3 segments. And the title of it is The Warmth of Individualism versus Rugged Collectivism. And it's divided into 4 parts. The first one is, what is individualism vis-a-vis liberty? The second is, what is collectivism vis-a-vis the social contract and government at large? The third is, what are we seeing with regards to collectivism, its spread, its impact, and its effect? And the fourth is how we can overcome that spread of collectivism? And so from the jump, this might seem like a refracting example, but I wanted to experience something with you. And some of you guys might have heard this poem before. Some of you guys might have read it. I know I read it first in middle school, and then I read it again in high school. And it's almost one of these experiences where you read a book twice and you interpret it a different way. This was definitely one of them, and it's called Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. It was published in New Hampshire in 1922, and I will get to why this is in line and why this coexists with the theme of this episode. But like I said last time, close your eyes and try to experience the words that he is saying, and I'll experience those with you and really think about them.
Want to hear me say that? Yeah. Stopping by woods on a snowy evening.
It's beautiful.
Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. Gives its harness belt a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep.
Beautiful.
But I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. It is beautiful.
And miles to go before I sleep. I think that's the one line in that poem of his that everyone kind of remembers, and maybe that was the first time that you'd ever heard it. And the reason that I wanted to share that with you is because of that effect of reading the same book twice and interpreting it later. And that poem and those words had always stuck with me. In fact, the first time I heard it, I thought they were talking about Santa Claus, right? Miles to go before I sleep, in the middle of the night, stopping by woods, it's snow, harness bells, you're thinking of a reindeer. But the reason I wanted to bring that in particular and share it with you, because maybe a few years ago, when I read it again for the first time since I was an adolescent, I searched into Robert Frost's politics. And I'm not saying he was a political operative at all. He wasn't an outspoken, in any true sense of the word, political individual. But when I found out what his politics were, it was almost like a light bulb went off in the dark. Like there was this flash in the ether. Because to me, the words he was saying and the emotion he was expressing, this sense of solitude mixed with individualism and liberty and being alone, you can almost feel that coldness of him standing by the woods on a snowy evening and feel yourself alone and feel his brain working and thinking about his loved ones, thinking about his plans, thinking about the miles to go he has before he sleeps, to me, it came as no surprise that Robert Frost, call this as hot a take as you want, was someone who was very pro-limited government. This is an individual who spent massive amounts of time in New Hampshire, whose state motto, after all, is live free or die. And when I found that out and I read a little bit more into his sort of views on political philosophy, it made such perfect sense, because I think that poem in a lot of ways represents individualism on one hand, and second, liberty. And nowadays, when we hear the term individualism, not often is it tied and tethered to this concept of liberty. Instead, people refer to individualism as rugged, as our mayor recently did, and as something that is a bad thing. But to people like Robert Frost or Ralph Waldo Emerson or Walt Whitman, who really viewed America as the final frontier, and Emerson was saying, drink the wild air. These people, the concept of an overbearing, oppressive government was so antithetical to what their notions of liberty actually are. And I think if you review these poems and their literature, Transcendentalism, Walden Pond, whatever the case might be, you'll kind of understand that the individualism and liberty that most Americans, especially our framers, are aiming at protecting isn't some ugly, gruesome byproduct of capitalism. In fact, it is the most beautiful liberty known to man. It is the liberty that a baby has when he comes out of the womb and cries for the first time and stretches his hands and looks up at his loved ones. Man and baby and child, we are born with liberty. We are born with natural rights. Our rights are not given from the government. And to view liberty in this sense, the truest, most beautiful sense, is the only way you can really conceive what restrictions on liberty are. And I'll give you another famous quote from Henry Ward Beecher. Liberty is the soul's right to breathe. And when man can't take a long enough breath, laws have been girded too tight. Without liberty, man is a syncope. Man is suffocating. Man is unable to breathe. And so what are those two parallel tandems? On one hand, liberty is your right to breathe, to run, to dig your feet and toes into the sand, to climb mountains, to blast rock, to fire rockets up into the air and land on the moon. Liberty is the soul's expression of using all of your faculties here on this earth to create things, to fire your ingenuity, to take fire from the gods like Prometheus. That is liberty, and that is individualism. And as Henry Ward Beecher's quote sort of alludes to, is the restriction on that liberty. And you need to think about individualism and collectivism in these very true, fundamental, and naked ways. Government, which collectivism has as its final expression, is a restriction on your liberty. Always has, always will be. If you take the dawn of man, we're all living in a state of nature. I have no guarantees that when there's a bump in the night, someone is not going to run and take my property, hurt me or my children. So we come into what's called a social contract, at least in theory. And I say, listen, you have the same anxieties that I do in the state of nature and wilderness where it's dark and there's animals and you're in a state of constant flux and anxiety because you've got no protections from the outside world. Men come together and they say, listen, I will agree to limit myself if you agree to limit yourself, and we impose penalties if those limitations are broken. I won't come over your side of the fence. I won't steal your property. I won't harm you or your wife or your children. And that, which political scientists call the social contract, is the foundation of collectivism and the foundation of government. Now, this is not to say that all social contracts and all agreements amongst men that limit our liberty are bad. For example, one of the most textbook restrictions on my liberty in a 21st century society is a stop sign. But that's actually a great example. Of course, my ability to drive a car or run on the street is impacted and fettered in a way by traffic signals and stop signs. However, that is something we agree to because if you didn't agree to limit yourself in that way and I didn't agree to limit myself in that way, we'd see T-bones left and right like Rocky in a freezer. We have to have those limitations on our liberty. But the point is this: collectivism and the government is a restriction on one's liberty. And collectivism in the government does not give us liberty, it holds us back from that. And I think that is a critical nuance that is missing, sometimes deliberately, in today's society, where you hear it all the time. The government will give you this, the government will give you that. Free buses, free subways, free X, free Y. When meanwhile, there is nothing free on this earth. In fact, the government is funded by our tax dollars that we work for. They take money out of our income at the end of the year and apply it to their programs. By very definition, that's not free, because if we all sat on our couches every day, the government wouldn't be funded, all right? And what we are seeing today, day by day, week by week, month by month, is this reverse, almost psyop experiment where they are trying to convince us, and I mean folks on the left, and I mean Democratic Socialists of America, but it's not just limited to them, that collectivism is the value and individualism is hurting people. It could not be further from the truth, and you need to reject every iteration of that being shoved down your throat. And the reason I came up with this episode's title, for those of you who are quote unquote monitoring the situation or watching what's going down in New York, is during Zohran Mamdani's inaugural address, he said this quote, and it's just a few seconds. I'm going to share it and watch it with you.
Many of these people have been betrayed by the established order. But in our administration, their needs will be met.
Just stopping that right there. Their needs will be met. If you woke up our founders with some mean cases of smelling salts, that would be violating to their entire ethos and dogma. The government wasn't designed to provide you with your needs or your daily bread. The government was designed to have that social contract and that bare-boned framework, and your daily bread was provided by your toil. It was not provided by taking money out of another man's pocket, which the government does, and given to you. Remember that. These small words mean everything, and I'll let it play in full.
Their hopes and dreams and interests will be reflected transparently in government. They will shape our future. And if for too long these communities have existed as distinct from one another, we will draw this city closer together. We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism.
Replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism. Let there be no mistake. Paternalism, especially government paternalism, is the most dangerous thing an entity and surreptitious leviathan known to man. And if there's one thing that is consistent across every atom of our historical record, it's that ceding more and more power to the government restricts and takes away more of your liberty. It is a zero-sum game. And we're watching this transpire every single day, where Zohran and his cronies and his den of thieves in Washington try to view this as the government being the light, as the government being your provider, as the government being a source of warmth, when the opposite is completely true. And if we want to use an example of Zohran's warmth of collectivism, it doesn't just spawn in rhetoric that you can write on a Hallmark card or a napkin at a cocktail bar. It results in a tapeworm of bureaucrats expanding a welfare state to proportions no one could ever have predicted in their wildest dreams. Look at this statistic right here, okay? New York City's budget in 2026. To me, sometimes I can't even believe that folks are walking around in this reality, taking this just to be true and real, but it is. The entire state of Florida's budget is $115 billion. Compare the size of, I really need you guys to think about this. Compare the size of Florida. It is both in its size, in terms of its geographic reach, and its population. I think it's got something like 3 times the amount of New York City in terms of its population, but it's, I think, 17 times, I don't know how many times more broad in terms of its reach than just New York City. Think of the amount of roads that covers. New York City, under this warmth of collectivism, results in this gargantuan Goliath of gluttonous bureaucrats expanding and growing with no signs of stopping. And here's the fundamental problem with government, especially today's iteration of government. They don't have any incentive to cut costs. When the government funds its budget and gives it to agencies, if those agencies don't use every dollar, they either get cut drastically the next year or they get cut entirely. What other business do you know of that doesn't have an incentive to cut costs? The government is the only one, and the way that they spend their money is the most inefficient out of any entity known to humankind. Have you guys ever been to the DMV? I had to go 2 weeks ago. I had the misfortune of losing my ID. And I kid you not, I would have rather swallowed a dry pine cone. I felt like I was locked up and held hostage, sitting there and wondering why I was surrounded outside of that building with people that in effect want more government, more DMVs, more state-run businesses all around them. And if you ask, well, why don't you just go to the DMV's competitor? Because you can't. They're a government-run monopoly. You are forced to use their services, and it was like a gulag. All right, it wasn't that bad, but it was terrible. And the worst part about this, which I had alluded to before, is it's not just the size of the budget. It'd be one thing if the government was taking our money, and this place was next century. High-speed bullet trains, beautiful streets, neon lights at every intersection, looking like Kyoto or Tokyo, no trash on the ground. And all of these government bureaucrats were doing God's work, and we were run by a bunch of benevolent philosopher kings. Let's see how our money's actually being spent. Look at that statistic, okay? And I'll read it if you guys are listening. New York is giving over $43 billion to public schools, $44,000 per student in New York City. And what do we get for that? Plummeting test scores. Yet simultaneously, we will have people that say we need more collectivism. We just need to give the school systems more money. Do you see the psychological operation that is being descended upon you like a bell jar? It's happening every day. And then if you take a look at this is a statistic released the other day, and I'll read it again. Fewer than half of the kids at 900 city schools pass math and reading. Fewer than half. Think about that. Really drill home on that point. The government takes money from A, and it doesn't just give money to C. The government is B, and the government intermediary passing things on to different people winds up expanding how much B gets. Very little of it actually goes to C. And if you want a great example, use a multimillionaire or a billionaire. Taxing them more doesn't just go to the bank accounts of poor folks. It goes to the government, and the government winds up spending that money like this. Resist the temptation to believe that all we need is more government. This is sterling silver proof that we need less. And if you need a good experiment in terms of, or a control group as to how government could spend your money, let's take a look at New York versus Mississippi. New York City spends about $44,000 per pupil. Mississippi, $12,000, and they're outperforming us. Do you understand the things that I'm trying to express to you? There is so much fraud, corruption, grift, graft going on in City Hall. You would not even begin to believe what is happening in that jurisdiction. It is a full-scale robbery. And for folks to sit here and say, oh, well, he's balancing the budget, or he's giving this, or he's giving that, understand that the city of Detroit went bankrupt following this exact protocol. And the scariest part is it's not just to budgets, okay? What is it expanding to? Right now, Zorn is piloting a program whereby he is, in his own terms, which are completely illusory, deceptive, and misleading, targeting bad landlords. And let's listen to it. This only goes for about 30 seconds.
Through our new citywide campaign, Fix the City, we will focus on the worst landlords in New York City.
I know some of you are already biting your tongue at worst landlords in New York City. Trust me, I'm gonna get there.
When necessary, we will take aggressive legal action to remove negligent owners and property managers. And for buildings that have suffered chronic neglect, we will work to transfer ownership to responsible stewards. Stewards that include community land trusts, nonprofits, nonprofits,
Wonder who owns those. Wonder who controls
or
those.
even the tenants themselves.
So there you have it. Zoran's going after slumlords, bad landlords. And on paper, you're like, Sweeenie, you can't possibly be against him going after slumlords. I mean, whose side are you really on? Listen to me right now like you never listened to me before. The single worst landlord in New York City, by far and away, is the government. Public watchdogs, year after year, report after report that the New York City Housing Authority is far and away, with no close second, the worst landlord in New York City. Zoran does not bother to mention that whatsoever. Why? Because that's him. That is the warmth of collectivism, okay? And I compiled a few, and this is just off the cuff. Let's take a look at the warmth of collectivism of NYCHA. That's what you call NYC Housing Authority. That's what you call. Let's take a look at some NYCHA apartments. That looks like the bathroom from Saw. I don't know how many of you have ever woken up with handcuffs on. Maybe it's more than I'd like to believe. But if I woke up in that bathroom, I would expect a clown with seriously frightening, hair-rising music to walk in the front door. That's the warmth of collectivism. Am I making sense to you now? Let's take a look at another. How'd you like to make an omelet right there? You'd bite into it. You'd expect some crunchy cheese. It would be a cockroach leg. I don't even know what that jug of water is on the ground. Might be cyanide. Check out this one. Shelving. NYCHA receives, and I'm going to show you more, over 3 million calls and complaints on a yearly basis. They oversee something like 133,000, and definitely fact check me on these numbers. I always encourage you to. Apartments. They are nothing but squalor. And this has been tried and tested for forever. Yet Zoran would have you believe, and the collectivists out there would have you believe, we just got to give them more money. You're right, brother. Let's just give them more of my money so that we can create project housing project after housing project in places that should be condemned. You talk to some of these NYCHA residents, it's not all of them, but it is a lot of them, far too many of them. And they're like, this is insane. Look at this one. I don't even know what's dripping from the walls. And my heart goes out, by the way. I didn't grow up silver spoon like Zoran did. My heart goes out to the folks that have to live in these NYCHA buildings. Not everyone has an easy path in life. But the government failures are the culprit, okay? It is not individualism. It is not liberty. It is not capitalism. These are government programs and government failures. Let there be no mistake. And flooding them with more money will only metastasize what you're seeing on the screen right now. Apartment, look at this. Don't even know what's coming, what's dripping through the ceiling. Acid rain? I got 2 more. Again, that looks like a jail cell. If I woke up there, I'd be like, what did I do last night that deserved me 25 to life? 2 more. Leaks in the ceiling. And this one, poor guy right here, looks like an elderly gentleman. His apartment is flooding. Looks like Noah's Ark popped open a springboard, all right? And the craziest part, and I know that's a very high bar to say that's the craziest part, is that Zoran and his cronies, these collectivists, that's what they are. They are proud collectivists who want to utilize tax dollars and private resources via extraction of their tax dollars. That's what they are. They are collectivists to expand. He takes aim in the most deceptive, fraudulent way of holding private landlords to ridiculously high standards while simultaneously the government gets off scot-free. He's had these hearings called bad landlords where people come around and talk about him. Not once has he mentioned NYCHA, the worst landlord by every public watchdogs group out of all the rest. Here's him talking and the standards he's holding for private landlords. And this, honestly, not much shocks me anymore living in a city like New York. This one made my jaw drop. And like, it's a minute, so let's just watch it. And the girl asking him the question, by the way, my heart goes out to her because she's asking all the right questions. She's like, well, I'll let you watch it. But she's like, this has never worked before. Why would you think it'd work again? Listen.
I was wondering if you could talk about, pushing these nonprofit-owned, tenant-owned developments when historically some of these projects have failed. The Attorney General has rated most co-ops in the city as high risk. Could you touch on, what this program is planning to do differently, and why, you think this will turn out differently.
Okay, so I think that girl was a little bit nervous. She's asking the right question. Why the hell would you think this would be any different? It's failed for the last few decades. And now you want to give it steroids? That's not going to change anything. It's only going to make it worse. And let's hear his response.
Thank you. Yes. I think at the core of it, it is a belief from city government that if you are not maintaining your responsibilities as a landlord,
NYCHA included,
the city will step in. We are talking about programs, many of which have existed before, but frankly, that have not been invested in.
They haven't been invested in. You're right. Brother, here was I thinking that these programs are failing. We just need to give them more money. Oh, what was I thinking? Thank you for that clarification, brother.
And we are committed to empowering our housing enforcement teams, whether HPD or the law department, to protect tenants. The other day on Tuesday, when I was asked about a specific landlord, this happens to also be a landlord of a building where there was an active beehive.
An active beehive. Zoran wants to take property away from private landlords for as much as a beehive. I'm not saying there should be a beehive. I would hate it if there's a beehive. I've been stung before, hurt me for a week. But he wants that to be the bar for private landlords when we just looked at 10 different examples of NYCHA apartments that look like they're in the middle of Havana. That's the warmth of collectivism, yet for private landlords, we'll go after you if we see so much as a yellow jacket. Do you see what's happening? It's plain as day.
In the building. That's the level of disrepair that New Yorkers have been forced to live with. And when nonprofits or tenants are in a position to take over those responsibilities, we're going to make sure that they are equipped to do a better job than the current landlord.
Yeah. That's like comparing a small fistfight to World Wars I and II. NYCHA is like the ether. It's like the universe compared to a grain of sand in terms of its dereliction, unfixed repairs, yellow moldy ceilings, asbestos. These places, a lot of them should be condemned. And more than that, this video was released, I want to say 5 or 6 months ago, okay? It's not just their condition. It's the lack of oversight that collectivism, the government, has on these buildings that allow mayhem to occur in them. Let's listen to this woman.
Lately, she and her neighbors say they're also concerned about people who aren't listed as tenants.
It's done all the time. There's people living in these apartments that have no business living in these apartments. They have 5 and 6 people that don't belong here.
Do you ever hear that happening here?
Yes.
You hear him? He goes, yes. That wasn't just a yet. He's like, brother, how much time you got, right?
How often do you hear about that?
A lot.
And again, I feel nothing but sympathy for these folks that have to live in these projects, in these NYCHA apartments, and have to live while watching Zoran on social media talk about bad landlords. If I'm sitting like, bruh, why don't you come over here and I'll give you a tour of this place that looks like Calcutta?
City's Department of Investigation hears about it too. And in 2023, it determined a Douglas House's tenant was subletting her $144 unit for $1,500 per month.
Sounds like an entrepreneur to me. Very illegal, but we understand the grift when there's no government oversight.
The department referred the case to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Investigators say the listed tenant actually lived in Brooklyn with her boyfriend.
They go wherever. The truth of the matter is the shortage in housing is bad.
People squat, people trap. Plenty of times.
We filed a public records request and found the Department of Investigation catches between 60 and 70 NYCHA tenants committing various types of housing fraud per year across the city. Cases in the last few years include NYCHA leaseholders living elsewhere, as far as Texas, and people who lived in NYCHA homes but underreported their income by tens of thousands.
Wait for this one.
Even a man who moved in with his girlfriend in a NYCHA unit without reporting the move or his salary as a NYCHA employee at the time, which would have drastically increase the rent.
Think about that. A NYCHA employee understands how easy it is to game the NYCHA system that he moves in with his girlfriend. Fellas, we've all been there. Sometimes, the bread isn't stacking up the way we want to, and we got to knock on the girl's door and say, hey, baby, it's going to be a cold winter. But for the fact that you have a NYCHA employee that understands how fraudulent and how easy it is to commit crimes under the watch and the ignorance and the blind eye of Zoran to these apartment complexes he just moves in. and doesn't report his income. That's the level of warmth of collectivism. I personally feel frigid, okay? Individualism is the light on this earth, and I'm surrounded by campfires whenever I'm expressing my faculties and my liberty. That's the difference between those two things. And I mentioned this company before, and I thought it was ironic. Fact Machine is a local New York company, and they track these opinions in real time, right? So if I'm talking about something 1 week, they'll say, oh, is Sweeenie right about X or Y? Let's take a look at the recent poll that they just did earlier today. And you guys can subscribe. I'll put like the link in the bio if I figure out how to do that, where you can look and bet in real time on majorities, right? If you think more people in New York City would agree that individualism is better, and you put down some wager, you can make money off it. It's not about that. It's about, look at these real live statistics. Thank God this one's in the favor. And this is kind of the landscape where we're currently at right now, where you have a city underneath a bell jar of propaganda, encapsulated to believe that collectivism could ever be more beneficial to individualism, even though every time the government, especially the New York City government, spends $1, it does so in the worst ways. And I've said this before, but I'll say it again. The government solution to a problem is often worse than the problem itself. And meanwhile, we got Zoran Mamdani, and I just checked in on him 15 minutes ago. Instead of going to these NYCHA complexes, he's on Instagram right now playing video games.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's talk to them.
Oh, wow.
Listen to me. It's just not even a point where it's funny anymore, because these are dire circumstances. These are existential crises facing America. And when you have this system that is so fraudulently mischaracterizing collectivism as being the light on this earth and government paternalism as being able to provide your daily bread, we are in a serious situation. That's not what our founders decided upon. That's not what has sent America into every distant corner of this universe. That is not what made our country. It is individualism. It is free markets. It is solitude sometimes. It is not combining together to create defunct, fraudulent, decrepit, surreptitious government programs of an army of bureaucrats that want to fatten their pockets and enrich their cronies and propel themselves into different careers in public office while the people suffer. That's all that is happening under the warmth of collectivism. It's ice cold. And as I've told you before, I like to start my episodes with a little piece of content. And since I started with a poem, I'm going to end with a poem. But I want to talk through it with you guys because I do want you to feel my energy. I'll start off by saying this. Liberty and individualism and your God-given rights that you are born with on this earth, they are the light, they are the spark, they are the juice of ingenuity that would send men flying, that would send us around racing cars, that would create steam engines, that would move granite rock, that would thrive in every way that a people and polity could. That comes from our liberty. It does not come from government handcuffs. Liberty is the light. Collectivism, let there be no mistake, is the darkness. So I would implore you, if you do nothing else for the rest of this year, it's to rage against the dying of the light. And I am so serious. Fight every temptation to think of collectivism and the government as benevolent. It is selfish. It is negligent. It is disregarding. And it is gluttonous in the very worst sense of the term.
Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
I want you to rage against the dying of the light.
Though wise men at their end no dark.
Do you hear me?
Because
rage.
Their words had forked no lightning. They do not go gentle into that good night.
Do not go gentle into that good night.
Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in the green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. night.
I want you to rage against the dying of the light.
Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night.
Do not go gentle into that good night.
Grave men near death who see with blinding sight.
Can you feel that?
Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
I want you to rage against the dying of the light and put liberty and individualism above collectivism. I want you to believe,
my Father,
that America
there on the sad
was
height,
founded on that.
curse,
And
bless
socialism
me now with
will
your
ruin
fierce
that.
Tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night.
Do not go gentle into that
Rage,
good night.
rage against the dying of the light.
We have one country, we have one life, and it's ending every single second. And the spread of socialism could be the end of everything that we hold dear. If there's one takeaway,